Well, welcome everybody. I am on the line with David Hayward. And if you don't know that name, I bet you know NakedPastor. That is, what is your tagline, David? Is it graffiti on the walls of religion? Is that right?
It used to be a pastor trapped, an artist trapped inside a pastor's body, and then it was graffiti artist on the walls of religion, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's if you don't know the name David Hayward, I guarantee you've seen at least one of David's comics, and they are sometimes breathtaking and sometimes funny and sometimes sad and sometimes just poignant pieces. And I've been following David, and we've been friends for probably 14 or 15 years now, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, a long time.
yeah.
Before you left your last church, in fact, because I
Oh
remember
wow,
when
that
you,
is a long time ago.
yeah, I
That
remember
was
when you announced
2010,
that.
man.
Yeah. So I remember you announcing that, and I was like, oh gosh, let's make sure David's okay, because that's rough stuff when you
Yeah, it was
finally
rough
take that
stuff. Yeah.
step. But David, I will let you kind of introduce yourself a little more, go into as
Yeah.
much detail as you want. I kind of let the guests blabber on as much as they want, and I will interject the question here and there.
Yeah, yeah, man, we go way back. I mean, I left the ministry in 2010. And then it was a couple of years later, I started an online community for people deconstructing or questioning their beliefs or leaving the church and all that, called Lasting Supper. And you
I
remember,
remember that.
you've been a member there from day one, I think, like
Yeah.
from a long time ago. So yeah, we go way back. And I wasn't aware that you were following me before I left the ministry, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was a time. That was a time. But I basically grew up in a Christian home, very religious home. Ended up like in the deep end of evangelicalism in a Baptist church and then a Pentecostal church. Went to a Pentecostal Bible college. That's where I met Lisa, my wife. We're still married. Um, Went from there to a theological seminary where I majored in New Testament studies, studied Greek and Hebrew, Aramaic, theological French, theological German, started my PhD in New Testament studies. Then we got pregnant, and I was offered, I couldn't keep going because of the money,
Yeah.
and I was offered a way out. Um, the president of Presbyterian College at McGill University offered me a way to top up my master's to an MDiv and then get ordained and pastor a church. And all the while I would be taken care of as a student pastor and all that. So I kind of accidentally tripped into the ministry that way.
Yeah.
It was a way out and a way to take care of my family and, also use my theological education. So I did. I got ordained as a Presbyterian pastor in Canada and served there for many years, left that, went into the Vineyard Church, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't
Yeah,
I didn't realize that you had been Presbyterian prior, and I didn't realize that you had Pentecostal roots,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
do too, and that's formative stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I've been around the block. I call myself my own ecumenical movement because I've had so many theological, denominational experiences.
Yeah.
I think that's partly because the way I was raised, grew up. Even though I was baptized Anglican as a baby, I we moved around a lot. I think I moved 13 times before I was 16, and my dad being transferred around as a police officer. And I we just went whatever church was convenient and closest and the most fun or the most correct or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was a whole smorgasbord of different denominations I attended, so that I never felt loyalty to anyone in
Yeah.
particular, which I think was good for me. So that I could serve as a Presbyterian minister or as a Pentecostal pastor or vineyard or whatever. So but then in 2010, I'd had enough. I realized I couldn't keep growing as my own authentic self freely. And the only option I felt for me was to leave the ministry. And as a consequence, it meant leaving the church just because of where I live and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, because, I was ordained at a young age. I don't have like a traditional education, but of course I've spent a lot of time studying and trying to learn, just as an autodidact nerd kid who, carried
Right.
a Strong's around in high school, and 3 or 4 Bibles in my backpack, because I was just that kind of, I think it's some sort of autism maybe that just makes me hyper focus on something. And
Yeah.
do you feel like you ever left what ministry is? Because I see you still as a minister in a lot of ways.
I know.
And I still feel like a minister in many ways.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question, because like my blog, Naked Pastor, I started that when I was a pastor
Right.
of a local church, like an official pastor, with
Right.
a pulpit. And a lot of people said when I left the ministry in 2010, you need to drop that handle because you're not a pastor anymore. And I'm like, well, fuck that.
Right.
I'd always kicked against authority,
right,
and attempts to control, things. So I did wrestle with it, actually. Should I drop Naked Pastor? Because it's problematic in more ways than one, not just the pastor part, but the naked part.
Yeah.
And but I had enough people convince me, look, you're basically doing what pastors do, and that is you're helping people in their own spiritual journeys move from point A to point B, whatever that is. It's up to you, your personal journey. I don't care if you're moving towards faith or away from it. I don't give a care in the world which direction you're going in, as long as you're free and making your own decisions and driving your own car and being spiritually independent. That to me is the important part. So
it's a lot like chaplaincy instead of
maybe.
pastoring. Yeah. I had a friend who is a chaplain tell me, that what you're doing, this kind of shepherding people through a process, isn't so much pastoring, but it is very much what a chaplain does, because you're in this transition stage in life, and that's when chaplains step in. So that I really started to identify with. That's
interesting. I like that, because a chaplain does, they are working like in a hospital where there's a variety of people they're meeting, or in the army, the military, where they're all different kinds of people, and they're actually forbidden from making people ascribe to any one denomination or theology or whatever. They're there to support each person where they are. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's there's kind of this compact within that setting where you have to agree that though you may believe one thing, it is your job to meet people where they are. And that's exactly how I feel.
I wonder if NakedChaplain.com is taken yet.
It might not be. That's a good idea. You're welcome. No, I think you should consider that. That is more what I see in the Lasting Supper as a member. And I don't contribute a lot, but I do read pretty much everything that goes in there without adding to it. But yeah, I think that may be a better moniker, honestly. But Naked Pastor has this classic feel. So the first time, and it may not have been the first thing I saw from you, but it was that cartoon you sent me, where Jesus is kind of disappearing over 4 frames. The first time I saw that, I just remember feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. It was still very raw to me, this whole experience of deconstructing and learning that as much as I wanted to, I did not believe in God. And I desperately wanted to, but just couldn't. I couldn't maintain it.
Right.
And when I saw that, I know that, artists always have their own point of view that they're trying to express, but there's also this knowledge that the people that receive it will also get what they get out of it. And for me, it looked like the character in it was doing so involuntarily. Like this was not a choice that he made. He was just walking there, and Jesus disappeared from his life. And that's how I felt. And it just hit me. And I think that's around the time that I started to message you, and you did an interview on a blog I had a long time ago ages ago. Anyway, that's going to be on the cover of this. That's why I'm talking about it of this episode.
Can I just share my screen real quick?
I think it will let you. Yeah, there should be a share option, but I'm not certain. If it won't let you, I can share it and open it up.
Here we go. Here, okay. I got it. There it is. Can you see it?
It's coming up. It takes a second. Getting there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wept when I saw it, and did for many times every time I saw it because I was just an emotional wreck.
Yeah. So that's see the date on it. It's 2010 down there in the bottom right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was that was when I just left the ministry.
Yeah.
I drew that. And I just posted it again today. I don't know if you noticed, but I just posted it.
Yeah, I did. I saw that.
I'm getting wild reactions from people.
I got a 6-day ban on Facebook, so I couldn't interact. I cannot do anything on Facebook right now. It's really frustrating.
What did you do?
Someone just posted a little questionnaire thing that said, what is one thing that drives you up a wall or makes you insane that people do? And all I said was, when people clip their fingernails in public, the little ting, ting, ting noise that it makes, it's very loud and grating to me. It's overwhelming. And I said, it makes me want to light people on fire. That's the part that got me in trouble. But it's obviously, I think obviously I would not immolate anyone, but you can't tell Facebook that.
So, man, one of my worst preaching experiences when I was preaching and a woman started clipping her nails while I was preaching.
No. Oh, I'd lose my mind. I would lose it. I had a coworker that would do it, and it seemed like his nails must have grown enough every day for him to clip his nails every day. And I would just sit there at my desk, like shaking, trying not to confront him.
That's hilarious.
I hate it. It's just so piercing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I'm banned right now. And any other time I've been banned, it's been something as dumb as that. But I don't think to filter myself fast enough. It's too late.
Well, I mean, that's kind of weird, though, isn't it? Like Facebook and Instagram and all that. They're all, and Twitter especially now. They're all going crazy. But okay, they make a decision. This guy wants to burn people. We'll let him back in 6 days.
Yeah, 6 days is plenty of time to repent. You're right. Man, it's just insane now how those things work, and they control our lives. Like I'm itching to be on Facebook, and I keep hitting like, and then I get the warning, hey, you can't do this. It's so frustrating.
Close that
we live
window.
Too much of our lives on that.
Yeah.
So tell me how the deconstruction started. And by the way, I think you may be one of the very first, if not the first person to call this experience deconstruction. And it's been called, Dark Night of the Soul. It's been called all sorts of things. There's been all sorts of names for it over the history.
Yeah.
But deconstruction is what resounded with me when I first heard it. And I'm pretty sure it was you that I heard it from. And that's, the name of this podcast is The Great Deconstruction.
Yeah.
And I believe, and maybe you'll agree. Sorry, I'm rambling. No. I believe that this period of time is going to be known as something like that, the Great Deconstruction, because since the Trump presidency and COVID and all of these world events that have occurred, it has become, I wouldn't say a trend, but it has started happening. People are experiencing this en masse. And I think when we look back in 10 years, we're going to be like, that something has changed here within the walls of the church. Something has changed within Christianity, and it's going to be known as that. And that's why I call it that. Kind of like the Great Schism and all of those things. It's focused on calling back to that history and looking at the present day as the time whenever we're really challenging this thing that we have. But yeah, go ahead and tell us where did you get started there?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know. Have you heard of Brad Jersak?
I know the name, yeah.
He's a Canadian theologian. We're good friends. He just came out with a book called Embers, and the subtitle is something like The Great Deconstruction.
Really?
Yeah.
Great. And, no ideas are original, so.
Yeah. And in that book, he actually quotes me a couple of times and uses one of my cartoons. But he dug back into my blog, and I started using the word deconstruction in reference to spiritual, to beliefs and spiritual life and relationship to the church way back in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And because I'd been reading Derrida, the French philosopher who coined the word in French, but the English equivalent. And I thought, wow, this exactly describes what I'm experiencing in my spiritual life. And so absolutely. I started using it way back in 2006. I've got the blog post to prove it too.
I think I remember you sharing that not long ago. That's crazy.
And then I became even more intentional about it in 2008 with more blog posts. And then finally, when I left the ministry, and then I was struggling with it. I launched The Lasting Supper in 2012. I actually reached out to people who were deconstructing at that point. So, but for me, I know a lot of people are experiencing deconstructing right now because I'm seeing it being used in every sphere of life. So we're deconstructing race, we're deconstructing gender. Yeah. We're deconstructing sexuality. We're deconstructing religion. We're deconstructing justice. We're deconstructing, all across the board. Everybody's questioning everything. And I think, and I agree, like Brad and like you, this is the great deconstruction that we're in. Yeah. But for me, it began way back when I was graduating from my master's, and that was in 1980.
Oh, wow.
3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I graduated with my master's. And I was a total Bible freak, like seriously, like you.
That's 40 years ago.
All kinds of Bibles.
Yeah.
I still have them. I still have my interlinear Bible.
I have 3 within arm's reach.
Yeah. I still have all. Well, I don't want to throw them out because they are sort of deposits of my earlier Christian experience that I don't want to disown, and I can't disown.
Right. Yeah.
It's part of who I am.
I completely feel that.
Yeah. So I've got my interlinear Bibles with all the different colored pencils and different writing in the margins and everything. Yeah. So, and then I took Greek and I took Hebrew, years of each, and Aramaic and all that, because I was just a total Bible freak and I was going to be a Bible scholar. And then just before I was in my graduation robes, ready to go to the graduation ceremony at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary near Boston. And I suddenly realized I don't believe in the 3 I's of Scripture: inerrant, inspired, infallible. Right. And to me, it was devastating. I was absolutely devastated to the point where my wife, Lisa, actually had to grab me by the shoulders and say, "We got to go to your graduation ceremony." I was freaking out. And that's where it began. The seed was planted of doubt.
Yeah. So it took you 20, 30 years for that to come to fruition and for you to leave the ministry.
Yeah. I compare it to corrupt computer code.
Yeah.
That gets in there and just starts eating away and corrupting your theological beliefs, Yeah. And it took a long, it took a long time. And I had to do that all the while when I was in ministry. So that made it interesting.
How, I have a similar relationship with the Bible. I still study the Bible. I still care about the Bible, and I still think it has a poignant message, honestly. I think there are important things there. So I don't want to throw that out. I think that Jesus' Sermon on the Mount is one of the greatest speeches of all time, and there will never be anything to really compare to that isn't derived from it. Yeah. So, and I think there's a lot of truth in that, as well as falsehood. Yeah. But my view of the Bible today is this is specifically a Jewish people's attempt to explain the unexplainable. Yeah. And that, to me, is not only a humanistic endeavor, it's a beautiful endeavor, and it's a piece of human history, and we should never forget those things. The Bible is only dangerous if you believe it is one of the three eyes or all of the three eyes.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
whenever the problems come around.
Yeah.
It's a lot more beautiful once you get over the initial shock of, this thing I believed my whole life is different from the way I understand it. Once that shock is gone, you can really embrace it in a much different light, I think. And it took me many years to get to that point, but I'm there now, and I'm very glad for it.
Yeah, I mean, just reading, like if anybody reads Joseph Campbell, for example, who talks about the value of mythology, and just because it's not historically a fact doesn't mean it doesn't convey something important,
right,
and even carry some measure of truth,
absolutely,
or communicate some truth. So, even though we might not believe in the historical Garden of Eden story as a actual historical event, we can still glean a lot of insight from it. It kind of reminds me of Bly. What was his first name? Something Bly, who wrote. He began the men's movement. Bly wrote on Iron John. Yeah, so he took apart that myth of Iron John and sort of applied it to men's personal inner health. So it's not like Iron John is an actual historical story, but we can glean a lot of insight from it.
Yeah, that's once you get to that point, I think your whole relationship with the world and the universe can kind of improve. Because as you know, I went through a long time of kind of being this new atheist, wanting to debate everybody, wanting to just argue my point of view and get people to convince that, this is the way to think, this is right. And that's just part of my personality. I'm an extremist no matter what I do. It's just how I'm wired. I tell people, I joined the Communist Party at 14 because I read the words of Jesus, not because I read the words of Marx.
Oh man!
And that's,
as an American, that's kind of a brave thing to do.
Absolutely, and my name's on that list, So since I was a kid, so it's one of those things where I always tend toward whatever is the most extreme, and then eventually I kind of come around to the middle again, though I still am card carrying and fully devout communist.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Thank God we're not in the McCarthy era. But listen, I when I was a teenager, the closest I got to communism, I am Canadian, so we live in democratic socialism. Democratic socialism, which is what I believe is a really healthy way of doing politics. But we also, it was at that time when it was cool to be communist. And I had a New Testament that looked like the Little Red Book.
Yeah.
Was it Mao Zedong's Communist Manifesto, I think?
No, it's Karl Marx, but yeah, I've got one.
Karl Marx Communist Manifesto, yeah.
But it was
a New Testament that looked like the Communist Manifesto.
I never really thought about, because everybody's had the Little Red Testament. They used to give them away in school here.
Yeah.
And I've never thought that they could be looked at side by side and maybe mistaken for one another, but you're right.
It was intentional. So you'd look cool.
Yeah.
Then the truth would come out that you were just trying to evangelize communists.
I didn't realize that. Is that the Gideons did that on purpose? That's funny.
Yeah. At least that's what I was told. That was all around the same time with Chick publications and all that stuff.
Right? I used to have one of each of Chick's publications. Man, all of them.
What a nightmare!
Oh boy, what a mess! But that's the kind of Christian I was when I was.
Me too.
Young. Yeah,
me too.
And you look back and I have formally apologized to most everyone that I brought into the faith because I feel guilty about it, and I feel guilty that I was misrepresenting it as far as I can tell. I don't think I was giving a true representation of what this Jesus guy was about at the time, even though my core beliefs were centered around caring about the poor and the needy and the widow and the orphan. It still reflected poorly in a lot of ways. So I'll ask you this to move on a bit. Right now you're a full-time artist. That's like your job.
Yeah.
And that's like Old Christian me wants to say that what a blessing that is.
Listen, I'm living the life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that does sound just amazing, and I'm a little jealous of you, though I have no artistic talent whatsoever. I think it's just amazing that you're able to do that, and that anytime I see someone who is local to me share one of your cartoons, my immediate reaction is to tag you and say, hey, look, it's down here in South Georgia, of all places, where people don't often think these types of thoughts, but more and more you see it.
It's
Through
cool.
what I call the great deconstruction. People are hitting that button, and a lot of your work is doing that. It's pressing that button or triggering that thought for people. What's that been like to kind of go from struggling ex-pastor, to full-time artist?
Listen, man, I've been drawing and everything for my whole life, and I started NakedPastor.com 5 years before I left the ministry. So, in cartooning, I'd been doing that for a few years as well and everything, but I was pretty much flying underneath the radar for quite a long time. I really do think I was ahead of my time a little bit with the whole deconstruction thing when I was talking about it as a normal process of spiritual development when we question our beliefs and everything. And I noticed that, man, how do we gather? I mean, how do we, there's so many people experiencing this all over the world. How do we, you can't meet anywhere, and most people wouldn't want to meet anywhere. That's why I started, online communities and things like that. But it was like my cartoons were reviled more than loved. I remember that back then.
Yeah.
And now, though, it's almost like they're becoming more and more mainstream a little bit, more and more popular as time goes on. I mean, I got a message from somebody the other day on Instagram, direct message saying, hey, I'm just sitting in a little coffee shop in Copenhagen. And I looked up and she took a picture of a cartoon of mine overturning where Jesus is flipping over the tables. And it was hanging there on the wall, a little coffee shop in Copenhagen.
Yeah, I saw you share that.
That's, So, it's become more and more of a thing now.
Yeah.
And which is good. It's a good thing. People are feeling less isolated and ostracized and alone, and they're feeling more validated and encouraged and affirmed that, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. This is normal. And also it's helpful for me because people are wanting to buy my books and buy my art and things like that. And I get interviewed on podcasts. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
You say you do this multiple times a week, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool. Several, at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow. That's really awesome. That's really cool. I did one yesterday with a friend, and he's going to be on mine. But
cool.
A good one to check out, Church and Other Drugs, because this will probably release around the same time. Church and Other Drugs. It's a good one. It's a former addict.
Church and Other Drugs. That's a great title.
Good name. Good name. That's kind of church is kind of its own addiction. It certainly was for me.
Oh yeah.
And it was more like and I've been addicted to substances before. I'm addicted to nicotine now. Very hard to quit, very hard to kick the habit. And I found it so incredibly difficult to kick the habit of being in that fellowship and having that built-in family. I grew up in not the greatest household. There was a lot of abuse and just bad stuff going on. So church was my escape from that. But when I realized that, I think this may be hurting me more, even, I had to release myself from it in some way.
That's interesting. Alcohol has been in our family, in my family, for a long, long time, and
mine too.
I don't know. I think addictive personality might run in my family as well.
Yeah, it definitely does in mine. And I picked it up.
Yeah, and I got to the point where I really love red wine and I love good whiskey, bourbon, especially. Yeah. And but I went on a big liquor fast last year for like 3 months. And changed my relationship with alcohol during that time. But one of the things I did notice was there's sort of the alcohol mindset where it's not so much the alcohol, but it's my thinking I need it. So when I'm feeling sad or down or frustrated and I need to soothe myself, my go-to is the alcohol, to have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or, a couple of drinks of bourbon or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the problem wasn't the bourbon, let's say. The problem was me needing to soothe myself for some reason. So that was a big lesson that I learned over that liquor fast.
I had a very similar experience to that.
Yeah.
I used to have a glass of scotch every day when I got home from work.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 years ago, when I got really, really sick, I was drinking to like deal with pain, to like deal with physical, real pain. But it was making it worse. I didn't realize it, but it was actually making it much worse. And it almost killed me to be drinking while having parts of my body shut down. And since then,
what did you have? What was your sickness?
I just had a severe gallbladder infection that went into my pancreas and caused my liver to start shutting down.
Oh, geez, alcohol, no.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know, and I didn't realize what was going on. I had gone to the hospital a few times, looking for answers, and they said, it's your intestines, it's diverticulitis, and I was like, I don't think so, but okay.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got really, really sick, like turned yellow, my tongue was black. I had gone into sepsis and I didn't realize it. I was really close. I would not have made it through the night had I not gone to the hospital. That changed my relationship with alcohol because I don't even like getting drunk. Never enjoyed it. Anytime I've ever gotten drunk, I just regret it, swear it off, don't ever want to touch the stuff again. And occasionally would have a little bit, but now it's I'm a lightweight. I can have one beer and I'm just buzzed, completely buzzed, and I don't need any more or want any more. But I might have a drink now once a month, maybe.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm glad you made it through that.
Yeah, me too.
My point was in relation to religion. There's the religious mind.
Yeah.
Where I'm afraid. I don't feel like I have any meaning in my life. What happens when we die? I'm feeling like I need help. I need to be rescued. And our mind might, because of my growing up in a very religious setting, religion might be my brain's go-to for self-soothing spiritually, right? So I totally see where religion, church, Christianity, theology can be an addiction. Absolutely.
That it certainly was for me, and I think it filled a lot of the holes in my life. I had an abusive father who was murderous and just he was an awful, awful person. And finding a God that loved me without condition was everything I wanted. I was ripe for it. I was the right age. I was the right mindset to just focus and consume nothing but that for a chunk of my life. How did in my family it caused quite a lot of ripples when you left the ministry? How did your wife and your kids take that? Did it go over well?
Well, my kids by this time they were well on their way to being young adults and had already started forming their own opinions about church and theology and Christianity and all that. They're all on very different paths than us spiritually, but they own it. They embrace it. They have their own spirituality that we applaud and support and embrace, But we were always open and honest with our kids all the way through. We didn't try to hide our deconstructing process from them. And basically, they traveled along with us so that when I did resign from the church, from ministry and left the church, it was no big surprise to anybody. And Lisa was like, we were together at the hip all the way through it. Yeah. But I'll admit, though, when I left the ministry and we left the church, that was a devastating experience because it wasn't just a theological thing. It was also financial, social, you name it, relational. we had to figure out how to be married again after that, because we'd been in the church together for over 30 years, serving the church. And that's where all our friends were. That's where I got my pay from. That's where we got all our support from. That's where we got all our sense of meaning from. That's where we got a sense of destiny from, and importance, relationships. And then it was all gone overnight. So, that was a real difficult time for us.
She was aware even in 1983, when you say this first started, of that. She knew this was part of your journey. Well, it's good that you didn't feel the need to hide it, because I feel like I couldn't tell anybody. I felt very ashamed of any doubts, especially, young apologists. Like I am the epitome of knowing what's true. And here I am questioning everything, absolutely everything. And as far as that social fallout, do you still live in the same town where you were ministering? What's that like?
Yeah, that's weird. And that's one of the reasons why when I left the ministry, basically it meant leaving the church, because it's a small enough town. I'd already had a reputation, notorious, maybe a little bit, naked pastor. I was always kind of offensive to other churches and pastors and so on. In fact, people in my congregation were hearing from people in other congregations that I was no longer a Christian, and God had removed his hand from my life, and I lost my anointing, and I no longer believed in God, all this kind of stuff was going on. So that, when I left the ministry and the church, there was no other, I couldn't go to any other church. Everybody knew who I was. I couldn't hide, and St. John, New Brunswick, Canada is on the East Coast. It's a small town. And it's really, and besides it's kind of quite conservative, where I live. And, it would have been difficult for us to find a place. Now, there's a place in another town, which is about an hour and 15 minutes drive away, where we're friends with the pastor and his wife, and we would go visit there once in a while, but they just retired. And so that's now gone. So, but I don't feel any compulsion to go to church anymore. It's just not there. One of the things Lisa and I had to do, though, was we had to be intentional about creating, building, and nurturing new relationships and friendships that we lost in the church when we left the church. We had to figure out how to make friends. So that's been a challenge.
I've been there. I certainly understand that. And my town is, to put it in perspective, it was about 75 to 80% voted for Trump here. So
Lord have mercy.
Stick out like a sore thumb, let me tell you. And I'm okay with that. See, that's the thing is, like, I've always reveled in being different and being the oddball. But it is more isolating over time than most people realize. You're kind of alone out here until somebody reaches out and sends you an email and says, the thing you said the other day really hit me. And I'm sure you experience that probably every day, with the comics going out.
Like if I lived in Toronto or, LA or somewhere, a big city, there would be all kinds of, opportunities maybe. But here where I am, where it's kind of small town and conservative, Lisa and I have relationships with enough people to keep us busy enough. But it's, I don't get that a lot here. I'm people may know who I am online, but locally, now, I'm kind of under the radar, and, but there's people that we know, and we can get together for coffee or go out for drinks or have them over, or they have us over or something. But it's enough to keep us busy. And, but it takes work. I think that's one of the big things people experience when they leave the church is loneliness. And we've had to be very intentional about overcoming that.
some of your cartoons, they almost preach a sermon to me. Um, there are a few, there are actually many that refer to Jesus and a little sheep. And there are rainbow color sheep and trans flag sheep, and you've kind of done variations of that. And
Yes.
I want to know what compels you to deal with that community and the church's relationship with that community.
Well, first of all, I have a bunch of gay friends and trans friends and so on, and I hate seeing how they're being treated.
Yeah.
Now, I live in Canada where we have laws that protect LGBTQ people, trans people. Same-sex marriage is legal. Conversion therapy is illegal for the most part. Yeah. And so I live in a country that's more favorable for LGBTQ, trans people, etc. But for me, it's almost like it's like, to me, the church has drawn a line or whatever, and this is the hill it's wanting to die on. It baffles me, the ferocity of hatred that I'm seeing against LGBTQ plus community, and I think I'm issuing a warning.
Yeah.
Not only am I trying to comfort and encourage and validate and affirm my gay friends, my trans friends, etc., my bi friends, my A friends, whatever. I'm trying to help them feel okay. On the other hand, I'm trying to warn the church: you need to provide safe spaces for these people.
Yeah.
Or I actually think the church is going to die. I think the church is going to die if it doesn't fix this.
Yeah,
because in my opinion, it doesn't understand love.
Right.
If you exclude certain people groups, even Jesus, whether you not you think that he was a historical figure, it doesn't matter. The point of the teaching was the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. The sun shines on the just and the unjust alike. Gravity pulls everything towards it indiscriminately, and that's what love is. And so when you say we love everyone except, or we love you but, or whatever, then that you don't understand what love is. And the church claims to be the spokes thing for love, right, and grace and mercy and compassion. And it's obvious it doesn't know what it means.
Yeah, it seems
so
absent.
That's why I am so adamant about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that about you. My partner is a trans man, and I have a roommate here that is trans as well. And in particular, his relationship with our friendship started because of issues with his mom, not appreciating the fact that he was trans.
Right.
And I'm proud to be someone offering that safety.
That awesome.
Safety net. That's
incredible.
That's one of the greatest things that I feel like I've accomplished in my life, is like I have a place where you can come and be whatever you need to be and figure it out and whatever, and there won't be any judgment. And through that we've helped him get his name changed and helped him do all the things, that the legal loopholes and things that you have to run through, which should be simple, you would think. It should be easy to do all that, but it's both expensive and difficult, especially here in the South, where difference is not always seen as a good thing or embraced. And a lot of that rhetoric, the hateful rhetoric, comes from the churches down here. So, and I think you said that the church is going to die because of it, and I think that is the church digging its own grave right now. And unless it does better or changes, it will not last. And that saddens me. I think the church is an incredibly powerful institution that can do immense good in the world. And yet this is the hill you want to die on. How sad.
Yeah. It's the same with race and, women. The cartoons that cause the most stir are my women,
really,
that are pro women, that are pro LGBTQ and trans and so on, and then questions the Bible.
Yeah,
those three are the top three. that's going to cause a stir. And yet these are the three areas where the church is digging its heels in, and it just baffles me that it's I remember when I was a teenager and then I was going to a Pentecostal Bible college. Way back in those days, you were not allowed to serve in any leadership capacity in the Pentecostal church if you were a divorced man. Mm-hmm. But they've changed that.
Right.
And why? Well, because of necessity.
Yeah.
They looked at
a lot
facts.
Of divorced men.
They looked at the figures. Over half of our men are divorced, and they're good men. There is, and we need men. So they relaxed the rules. It's kind of like during before COVID, you could not do therapy, counseling legally over the phone or over Zoom. It had to be face to face, and you couldn't cross state lines either. For a licensed therapist, you had to actually meet with the person. It couldn't be virtual. Well, COVID changed that. Why? Because of necessity.
You have to.
Because of money, because of availability and access and everything. They had to change the rules. And so that's my hope, is that the church will come to the point where we're saying, look, not only are we losing LGBTQ people, we're losing all their families, we're losing all the people who love them and support them. We need to sort of relax the rules here and change our minds. That's my hope.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it has to be forced, that you have to force their hand, but I think this is often the way things happen.
Yeah, it really breaks my heart to see and to hear. I mean, local pastors do sermons all the time on queers and atheists and trans people, and they're just feeding these seeds of fear to people that are based on nothing. There's no basis for a lot of their thought here. And it's incredibly hard to see, and I appreciate the work that you've done in that area, because I have seen queer friends of mine share your stuff, and I know that it makes them feel accepted in a way that they weren't feeling. Because if Jesus was anything, it was like, just come as you are. That was it.
Yeah.
And if you need to change anything about you, I'll handle that. That's kind of one of the core tenets of this gospel thing is, you come the way you are and we'll figure the rest out.
Yeah.
It's a willingness to do that.
I don't think, the historical Jesus, if there was such a person, and we can go into that at another time, but I don't think he cared. Really, honestly.
I don't think Jesus concerned himself with who you slept with or what was between your pants or how you felt inside. I think it was about acceptance and more importantly, loving your neighbor and living in literal, real communion with your neighbor.
Yeah.
Those are
totally.
That's a much different story than this guy died and rose again. But
I don't believe that whole salvation narrative anymore.
Yeah, do you feel like the story is much more powerful without that? Because I do. I feel like the whole gospel story is much more powerful if Jesus.
Yeah, well, totally. When we take this, the whole salvation narrative, in my opinion, was formed over time to protect and populate and promote a exclusive religion. Every religion wants to be the exclusive religion. Every religion wants to be the right one, except for Hinduism, which has a way of, including everything. So I think if you get back to the roots of, say, some of the teachings of Jesus, we find a more universal, global kind of an idea of humanity and spirituality than if we go down that whole salvation narrative storyline. It tends to draw a line between who's in and who's out, and it ends up being most of the world that's excluded. And so, I think when you drop that whole salvation narrative, that whole exclusive, all that exclusivity falls away, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if Jesus came, died for your sins, so that you can go to heaven, and only 10% of the population of all time is able to make it, that's a failure. You're really saying, like, Jesus really didn't do much.
Yeah.
But if
look,
you kind of embrace the other thing.
Here's my opinion about theology. One of my opinions about theology is, let's look at a thumbnail sketch where God creates people, and he's walking in the garden with them. Everything's great, hunky-dory. There's unity. Everybody's one. There's no, then there's the fall. Then there's the sin. And then there's, separation. And then there's wrath. And then there's, all this. And then a lamb has to be provided. There's the sacrifice. There's the spilt blood. There's the reconciliation. And then in the end, we're walking again in the garden with God, all one, and everything's nice and peaceful again. All that in between, it's like we're one with God, all are one, and at the end, all are one. But we need this huge narrative to try to explain why we suck, why we fall, why we sin, why there's brokenness, why is there a sense of separation, why there's all this confusion. But I think the brackets within which all this theology is happening is the stable part that it always is, and that is the oneness of all things, the connection of all things. All the rest is just an attempt to explain what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Well, it's if I don't know if God would work in such a convoluted way. It's like, why can't you just make this simple? And I think
it's like that story. It's like that story of the Inuit, I think, First Nations person, where he asks the priest, if you guys never came to witness to us, you're saying that God would love us and everything anyway, because we'd never heard the gospel. And he says, yes, that's right. He says, well, then why did you ever come here in the first place?
Couldn't you just leave us alone?
That to me explains the whole theological religious enterprise right there.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense that way. To require that I suss out the truth in this world. Wow, what a burden to put on man, to try to figure out what is and isn't, especially with something that is allegedly so much bigger than us. And I would define theology as trying to explain the biggest thing in the universe in 2 or 3 words. It's just impossible. It's beyond our ability to explain, and beyond us. So it also takes away this sovereignty of God in a way. And I don't even believe in God, but like if God, he's either sovereign or he's kind of useless to me. So it's strange to try to control the narrative of God that we can't possibly know. We can't.
Right. I agree.
So strangely enough, like one of your cartoons is like a church building with God stuffed inside, the word God stuffed inside, and then with it kind of exploding out. I really love that one too. That's kind of what leaving the faith has done for me. Even though I don't necessarily believe, God is still much bigger now than he ever was before, because I can say I don't know, and I don't have to know. There's no requirement on me to know. I can just sit back and enjoy the mystery of things now.
Absolutely.
What time did you need to go, David?
I need to go in a few minutes. Yeah, because I got another interview here in a few minutes. But
okay, well, I'm going to let you kind of close us out. Say where we can find you, and kind of promote your stuff, and say some closing words.
Real quick, hold on.
Sure.
All right, I just came up with a new book. Flip it like this.
Yeah.
So actually, it's kind of funny because you need to flip it to read that.
Yeah, it's actually coming over not in a mirror, strangely enough.
Yeah. So that's my new book, Flip It Like This, which is a collection of my best of cartoons. Okay. And so that's available now wherever books are sold. But if you're looking for me, NakedPastor.com, I'm really good at responding to people's emails and messages and so on. I love engaging with other people. And I'm on all social platforms like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it, I'm there. And I really enjoyed our talk, Matt. This was a good conversation. Appreciate it.
I'll plug theLastingSupper.com. I've been a member
since
day one. Great community.
Yes.
Lots of people who are just sharing their experiences.
And I'm developing it right now. I've got some people working on it where I'm going to, I have a bunch of courses as well that I'm going to actually make that a part of the Lasting Supper, where I'm just
very cool.
If you join the Lasting Supper, you get access to all my courses. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like $7 a month, I think, or is it more?
15.
15. Okay.
Yeah.
Back before inflation, that's what.
It started at 7. It started at 7. Yeah.
But honestly, it's really worth it.
It is
to have kind of a built-in community. If you're missing the church thing, but you're not able to do the church thing anymore for whatever reason, there's no religious preaching. It's a lot of times just people bitching about life and being honest about what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, whenever it first started, I remember this was a lot of people's first time getting to cuss. So, it was just a lot of people just trying to cuss as much as they could to get it out, because it's freeing. That experience is very freeing. I went through that myself, and I appreciate what you've done there, and I appreciate the work you do. I think it's not only poignant, it often hits home in a way for me that inspires me to be better and to do better. And I appreciate what you do, David.
Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. I'm glad we've been friends so long. It's hard to believe, but
crazy.